And also your sense of the horizon for the print product. Pearson came out earlier in the week, obviously owner of the Financial Times, saying that they think the print version of the FT within 5 years will be substantially reduced and pushing much harder into new platforms, new digital platforms. Do you, and Rupert Murdoch actually came out 2 weeks ago and said he thinks 10 years minimum, perhaps 2 decades for newspapers. What's your sense on all that in terms of the print product itself?
Well, I think it varies. I mean, it's easy to be broad brushed across a big global empire, but I think that the more localised your newspapers are, the better your franchise. So if you look at Fairfax Media today, yes, it has big metropolitan newspapers in it. It has literally several hundred local newspapers in much smaller markets than Sydney and Melbourne. So I think the franchise for those smaller newspapers is far stronger. And when I say we've got several hundred, I'm talking about Australia and New Zealand. And I think they have a very viable long-term future at a more localised level. That is why we announced last week in our regional division of our company the rollout of a very exciting new rollout of our web sites.
Yes, there's a couple hundred there, isn't
160
yes, right.
across Australia. And that will basically follow the rollout of the NBN process. So it's not as though we're actually sitting back doing nothing. We're doing a lot of work in this company. We just haven't made a big song and dance about it. I'd rather do that after we get it in place than before we get it in place in the market. However, we're doing a lot of work to make sure this company is very sustainable and viable for the long term in either print or in digital.
So just to press you again on timelines, because we've got to do that. I mean, do you think 10 years is reasonable for a metropolitan? Take your point that the regional and local papers may have much longer life. I think that's what you're suggesting there.
I am, yeah.
The metro, the big mastheads, those flagship mastheads, 5, 10 years, 15 years. Is that a feasible timeline for you?
Look, I don't think anybody knows would be my simple answer. Whether it's 10 or 20, who would know? I remember going to a newspaper conference in the States in 1992 or 93, and a gentleman who's well known called Ted Turner.
Yes, heard of him.
Stood up, I'm sure you've heard of him, stood up at this newspaper conference in round about 92 and stated to an audience of some 1,000 newspaper people, very emphatically as the keynote speaker, that by the year 2000, there would be no newspapers in the world.
Right.
And that's a fact.
Yeah.
He said it. So here we are in the year 2010, and certainly in Australia we have a very viable, strong, sustainable industry, newspaper industry. So when people make projections, estimates, I think it's their personal view. And again, I would say that the longevity of more localised titles is far longer than 10 years. I think what newspapers need to do in a metropolitan sense is probably adapt to the new circumstances and be flexible in their approach, whatever that may be, whatever that may mean. So I think the sort of talk about no newspapers is probably, I can't see that in 10 years.